it points out various elements about the Ukrainian manpower, the ammunition that they're receiving, the likelihood of Trump winning the US election, and the possibility of a Russian offensive on Ukrainian. In the next 5 to 8 months, how do you see the battlefield?
Well, first of all, come on. You and I have been talking for some time now. How long have I been saying that ammunition is going to be a problem? Forever. How long have I been saying that manpower is going to be a problem? Forever. How long have I said that equipment's going to be a problem? Forever. Training is going to be a problem? Forever. So for the economists suddenly to wake up and say, "Oh, this might be a problem 6 months from now," no, it's happening right now as we speak. Ukraine won't survive another 5 to 8 months under the current conditions. I don't know if people saw what's happening in Kharkov right now. Air defense is down. The Russians are now able to drop glide bombs on Kharkov. Kharkov was always one of these places that had heavy air defense, and the nationalists and the Ukrainian military could operate inside the Kharkov city environs with a sense of invulnerability. Not anymore. Russia's dropping bombs on downtown Kharkov right now, taking out these targets. That's the end of Kharkov's ability to resist. Ukraine will have to surrender Kharkov in the coming weeks, I believe, because they have no chance of holding on to it. It will be surrounded. There might be some diehard nationalists in there, but at the end, that's the end of Kharkov, and that's the future of every single place Russia wants to take right now. The Ukrainians are incapable of mounting a sustained, cohesive defense because Russia will now bring to bear weapon systems that can operate with a greater degree of freedom because there is no more air defense capability for Ukraine. And so as Ukrainians bring troops up and deploy them and dig them in, boom, 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 they're dead. Reinforcements come in, boom, they're dead before we get to the battlefield. Commanders tried to meet to discuss them, boom, they're dead. Logistical people come in and say, where do we put the fuel? Boom, they're dead before they even get to talk about it. Russia controls the air. And it's not just what Russia's doing on the battlefield now with these glide bombs, but it's what they're doing in the rear area with drones. Now they're just blanketing the rear area, killing everything that moves. And then you combine that with the fact that Russia's taking the gloves off when it comes to the strategic air campaign, and they're starting to bring in the Zircon hypersonic weapons, the daggers, the Kinzhal hypersonics. But now, because all the air defense is down, even the drones, which were pretty much put up there as bait, saying, "Here's all 50 drones." Fire your $1 million missiles at them. There's no more $1 million missiles to fire at them. So the drones now are coming in and hitting strategic targets. It's over for Ukraine. So, the economists, they've never been right at all. They've always been anti-Russian. So the fact that they are now speculating, that is sort of their concession that maybe Russia's doing something right. But even then, they can't be honest about the inevitability and the immediacy of the collapse that's taking place in Ukraine.
I've seen that you wrote a piece on Consortium News, the French road to nuclear war. And I talked with Ray. He said that you wrote the draft of this article. And
Guilty.
yeah. And in your opinion, where are we headed when you look at the behavior of the French president, Emmanuel Macron?
I mean, it's a very complicated question. And it gets into the psychology of France, and it gets into the psychology of this European Union experiment that France has embraced. It gets into the psychology of France as they relate to NATO and the fact that France has always been somewhat somewhat intimidated by NATO because they felt insufficient to diminished in the eyes of NATO. Macron used to be someone who looked at Europe, looked at America, looked at Russia, and said, I don't want Europe to become the battlefield between these two superpowers. And therefore, rather than allowing Europe to be subsumed by American national security and foreign policy imperatives, that it's time for Europe to stand up on its own 2 feet and define its own security parameters and come up with its own means separate from NATO to safeguard those. That's pretty sane thought. Amazing if you ever sat down with Putin, who was saying we need a new European security framework. They're saying the same thing. They're saying the same thing. Putin's saying, "Hey, Europe, let's talk with you. Get those Americans out there because they're troublemakers. Let's just talk to you. We'll make this thing work out." Ukraine, They can move to the European Union if they want to, but they can't be part of NATO. They can't be part of any military alliance on our border. But if you want to integrate them economically, feel free if you're going to pay the price, but don't ask us to pay the price. If you want it done, you take care of this mess, this basket case called Ukraine. But if not, then we'll do it. But you guys stay out of it because we can't mix the two systems. But Russia was more than happy to talk with Macron about this. But then, the United States and NATO is the poison pill of Europe, insisted that Ukraine had a right to have membership, and Russia drew the red line, and now we're at where we're at. But Macron, like the rest of Europe, was hesitant in leading too aggressively into the Ukrainian problem out of fear of expanding this conflict. They didn't want a world war with Russia. But the United States kept pressing. And once you commit, it's like going to a casino and you get sort of caught up in the sickness of gambling. You go in there with $500 in your pocket and say, I'm only going to gamble $500. If I lose it, I walk away. But then you lose it and you go, well, in my wallet is an ATM card. I can go take out